Direct primary care is an innovative, alternative path to insurance-driven healthcare. Typically, a patient pays their doctor a low monthly membership and, in return, builds a lasting relationship with their doctor and has their doctor available at their fingertips. Welcome to the My DPC Story podcast, where each week you will hear the ever-so-relatable stories shared by physicians who have chosen to practice medicine in their individual communities through the direct primary care model. I'm your host, Marielle Concepcion, family physician, DPC owner, and former fee-for-service doctor. I hope you enjoy today's episode and come away feeling inspired about the future of patient care, direct primary care.
Direct primary care is, at a superficial level, a billing model that charges a monthly membership for primary care services in lieu of billing insurance. But what DPC really is carries a meaning far deeper than that. It is time and access put back into the patient-physician relationship. To me, it's a commitment to transparency for true shared decision-making with my patients. It's a net for those who have fallen through the cracks of the healthcare system. And it's autonomy restored to the physician who refuses to run the hamster wheel for someone else's gain. I am Dr. Cindy Dafashy of Archway Family Medicine, and this is my DPC story.
Dr. Cindy Dafashy is a board-certified family medicine physician who is committed to restoring the patient-physician relationship. She is passionate about patient education, price transparency, and helping her patients navigate the complicated maze of the healthcare system in a simple and straightforward way. She feels strongly that a family doctor should work in the interest of the patient and not for the insurance companies. Dr. Dafashy's academic career has spanned the state of Texas. Leaving her hometown of San Antonio, she attended Rice University in Houston, where she graduated with her bachelor's in cognitive sciences. She then went on to obtain a master's in medical sciences from UNT Health Science Center in Fort Worth. After her master's program, she moved to Galveston, where she worked as a research associate at the University of Texas Medical Branch, or UTMB, in the Maternal Fetal Medicine Division in the Department of OB-GYN. Dr. Dafashy thereafter attended Texas A&M College of Medicine, training in both Bryan and Temple, Texas. For residency in family medicine, she returned to the island to train at UTMB Galveston. Dr. Dafashy opened her DPC practice, Archway Family Medicine, in Houston, right out of residency, where she hopes to change the way patients are treated by offering a more affordable, transparent, and accessible option. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Dafashy.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
That is definitely a mutual feeling. As I was sharing with you right before we were recording, hearing the power in the words in your opening statement, it just really, really is a much needed, injection of enthusiasm and drive as to why this movement means so much to us. So with that said, I was thinking when I was preparing for this interview about a conference that I had just attended where there were a lot of residents who had not yet heard about DPC. And so for you, who was planning and dreaming and actively, doing the things to open after you left your residency program, I wanted to ask you about this quote and where it came from that led you to open DPC after residency.
So at Archway Family Medicine, we believe we're stepping into something greater for the future of primary care. We're leaving behind a dysfunctional, wasteful, and backwards form of delivering healthcare. The current system prioritizes catering to insurance needs, packing doctor schedules, and leaving patients in the dark about where their money is going. So for me, when you're in medical school, you really don't see the gears that are moving behind the scenes of what it means to be a primary care doctor. I mean, you're so focused on learning the medicine and not making some horrible mistake that you don't really pick up on the subtleties that are actually not so subtle once you're in it, I guess, once you're in your residency training. And I had a really great experience in my residency. I felt fully prepared to work on my own coming out of it in regards to the medicine. But there were moments, and really it was the sum of these tiny moments that spoke to me and said, this is not right. It wasn't right that I could never answer how much something costs other than I could give them a GoodRx coupon. it wasn't right that a huge focus of our training was how to bill to the highest level and then how to document for said billing. And I wondered, what could we be learning instead if we didn't spend so much energy on becoming experts in billing and documentation? I mean, that's not my job. That's not why I went into medicine at all. It wasn't right to me that even the way physicians talked about patients would circle around their insurance status and assumptions we made if someone was uninsured. Even treatment decisions sometimes would be scaled back because they, quote, couldn't pay, or they assumed they, quote, couldn't pay. And it wasn't right that I'd be in rotations and I'd be learning from various subspecialties. And then I was in my own clinic and they say, well, just refer them out. There was just this disconnect between the physician I wanted to be and the physician I was being trained to be. I mean, to be fair, a lot of that focus on billing and documentation, I think it comes from a good place. The program really wants you to transition well into the real world, quote, and that's the system that traditional fee-for-service clinics operate in. So I get it. They wanted us to be prepared, but to me, this is not medicine for me.
And when you were in that place, what was it that eventually had you put those little pieces together to then, commit to, and after residency, I'm going to be the physician I'm training to be and who I've dreamt about being, to open up Archway Family Medicine?
So I was at the beginning of my second year of residency when one of my co-residents actually told me about direct primary care. It was a model that they were always interested in practicing in. And I had never heard of direct primary care. I heard of concierge medicine, but even that superficially, I suppose. So I looked into it just to read about it, and I read, I can't even remember where I was reading a blog post, but it was interesting. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna read another article. And then I read another article, and then another article, and then I decided to buy Paul Thomas's book. And I mean, I flew through that book probably in 2 days, which is a commitment when you're in residency and you probably should be doing something else. I just was like, this is it. I mean, this is exactly how primary care should be practiced. This is how I want to practice medicine. I mean, I went on Amazon and bought every other DPC book out there and just ate it up. And my brain just felt like it was on fire. And I was like, I have to tell everybody about this. I mean, I told my husband, and he was incredibly supportive. I just knew I didn't want to step one foot into the current system coming out of residency. And we knew that now would be the time to take the dive. I mean, this is the time where I can take the risk. I could take the, quote, pay cut starting off because I'm already not making much money as a resident anyway. And I mean, that fire, it just grew. And the fire that came out of my mouth was probably even hotter because I probably told every person I came across about DPC, anyone that was willing to listen, my co-residents, my family, my friends, faculty, specialists who don't even care about primary care. And I probably wasn't very interesting for a period of time there because it's literally all I would talk about. But I mean, I think that's how you spread the word of direct primary care is you get excited and people just want to learn. They want to learn this new model. And everyone says that word of mouth is the best form of advertisement for DPC. And that's how I heard about it. And that was kind of my goal, is to kind of just keep talking.
That right there, people, that is legit DPC Kool-Aid. And that is the entire experience during DPC Summit, any of the DPC conferences that you should attend. That is my biased opinion this year, because that, people, is legit the DPC Kool-Aid right there. When the fire is hot as heck coming out of your mouth because you are so excited about living again and about being able to live as a physician like you've always dreamed about, and always and being able to take care of your patients like you thought you were going to be able to after medical school. That right there. So when people though are saying, wait a minute, you opened, like you started thinking about it, dreaming second year, read all the books, got all the resources, but then how did you plan and how did you actually open after residency, not taking any side gigs? What's your answer to those people?
Sure. So there was a lot of planning up front because I learned about it my second year. I really had a lot of time to look into it. I basically took all those DPC books that I had and created my own to-do checklist on Google, and I just added and added, and I just kept adding. And every time I might be in clinic and something would come up and I would say, oh, I wonder how I would do that in my own clinic. And I would add it to my to-do list and figure it out, or maybe I'll do this in such way. And that to-do list grew to maybe an 11-page Google document, which was overwhelming. But I think as I moved through residency, I made that decision. I need to start training, or I need to approach residency with the mindset that I'm going to do everything on my own. And that, I think that's what really helped me. And it made that to-do list actually not that bad, because I've started kind of answering some of those questions on my own. And then towards the end of third year, I took that to-do list and started creating an actual timetable out of it, which I had a lot of help from my sister to do it, because she's very organized and she kind of helped restructure my brain. So my husband is also a physician, and he was also graduating residency at the same time as me. I mean, it was exciting. It was exciting that we were both finishing and we were both going to start and do what we've been training for so long to do. And we made that decision that I was going to just put all my energy into opening the clinic rather than taking a side job. I just had a baby at the end of my third year of residency. So I had a lot on my plate that I wanted to focus on, and I think I knew I didn't have the bandwidth to take on, a side job and the baby and starting my own clinic and figuring out how to do it all, as in setting up the clinic itself.
That is a lot to bear. And I think that it feeds into you doing the research and you planning your DPC, that you made that decision about your own autonomy with those three things on the table. Like, which of these three things am I going to choose not to pursue, so that I can really make sure that the two things that I need to, dedicate my time to, my baby and then my business baby, that they are taken care of. So I think that is even something that not a lot of people would be able to think about, especially when you're coming from a residency program where it's like, when you get that ER page, you go to the ER. Like, you don't question it, you just go. And so we're so trained to, yes, I will be there. Like, yes, I can do that. Yes, I can take on another thing. Like, yes, I can learn to code better. So I think that is one thing that you should be proud of yourself for. Anybody who's thinking about DPC while in residency should be proud of, because that's putting yourself first. And if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of any patients.
Oh yeah. The power of no is a big lesson that everyone needs to learn. I mean, I don't think, even going through residency, actually even towards the end, when everyone's starting to apply for jobs, people approached me with different job opportunities. And I mean, yes, maybe if I hadn't heard of DPC, I probably would have gone for them. But I think I realized I need to just stick with what I've decided and just go full force and say no. And there's always going to be opportunities, but it's about sifting out which one's actually taking you to the next step of your goals.
I love that. And when you talk about how your list turned into an 11-page document, your sister helped you with the timeline. Did you make that timeline based on goals, or how did you prioritize that document?
It was such a crazy document. I originally had it organized by categories. So I had like a legal side, I had office logistics side, figuring out my workflow side, I had a marketing section. But what my sister did, so my sister started her own business, not in medicine, but she took that same principle of what needs to happen first for everything else to happen. And so it was really organized that way. The book, have you read the book, The One Thing? The One Thing, I thought was such a great book, because it really teaches you what is the one thing you need to do right now for everything else to work. And that's how I set it up. It's like, well, I can't do anything without my business being formed as a legal entity. So we're going to start there. Then once it's formed, okay, so now we need to set up an email and grab a domain name, because everything's going to funnel back to that email address. And the website is just to kind of grab it, I think. I guess you really didn't have to start it off with the email, but then it was financial. So what is your banking? And then everything else could play out, because you can't get an EMR, you can't buy supplies. I mean, you can, but then you'd be using your personal accounts, and you really should separate it. So all to say, everything about that timeline was what needs to happen first, what is the most important thing now, what is important but not necessary. So actually how she divided it, I'm trying to remember her categories. It was like critical in order to open, like literally cannot open without this, like registering your business. Can open, but don't necessarily need this yet. And then would be nice to add, but down the road. So I still have stuff in that bucket that I haven't gotten to. It was really a good way to just keep me moving and keep me going through the steps and not feeling discouraged or overwhelmed by the to-do list.
No, that's great. It's very like Eisenhower matrixy sounding as you describe it like that. And I think that it also helps, like when I think about the separation there, as you described it, it's like it takes you out of emergency mode for everything. And it's like, these are the things that it's okay to take a breath on. So I love that, especially for people who are not MBAs. Like, you and I did not go to MBA school, and yet here we are. So love that. Now, with you having just absorbed all of this information about DPC, what would you say the difference is between prepared and being ready?
Yeah. So being prepared is making that checklist, but being ready is actually doing the actionable steps to check them off. I think I could have sat on a to-do list throughout residency and just kept adding and adding and adding. But I think when I was reaching the end of my residency, I said, okay, the time is coming. And I'm not graduated yet, but even in the last months of my residency, I said, well, I can still form the business. There are things I can do and not have to be clinically unavailable or whatever it may be. So I felt prepared definitely through my second year and then the beginning of my third year. And then it wasn't really till my third year where I said, okay, I'm ready to start taking the steps to actually do day one, because each step that you do and each check box that you complete feels so satisfying because that's one less thing you have to do. And it's not so scary when you just cross off one thing. I remember when I registered my business as a PLLC, wow, okay, things are happening. I have a name. It's out there. That's all I have, but it's out there. I mean, I took a step. It's happening. It's a real thing. My clinic is going to come. It's energizing.
It absolutely is. It's like, I really do equate it to a business baby because it does also cause sleepless nights. But it's like when you have that feeling of pride and just sheer joy that it's something that, especially for you, as I was reading about and listening to your previous interviews, like you are very passionate about honoring your creative side. And so I definitely feel that for people who love creating things, that DPC is a really good fit for physicians who are also creative in whatever, hobby, art form, whatever they do that's not related to their physician job directly. That I think that it's a great opportunity to really represent yourself as an individual. And so with that said, given that you're in Houston, did you entertain the idea of ever joining another DPC versus opening your own? And what was it like in the end when you decided that you were going to open your own clinic?
So I did. I went back and forth on if I wanted to start my own or if I wanted to join. And really what I wanted to do first was actually visit other DPC clinics to just get a feel. So I did design my own elective in third year where a direct primary care elective. No one had any idea what I was doing. I mean, there's like, okay, you designed it, go do what you think needs to be done. And so I visited just one direct primary care clinic in Houston, First Primary Care, which is huge. You've interviewed Dr. Goyle before. He's wonderful. His whole clinic is awesome. All of the physicians and NPs and everyone who works with him are just great people. And it was so fun because I spent so much time kind of reading the theory of direct primary care, and then to see it in action, first of all, it just solidified my decision even further. But I was able to kind of see the two sides. So I got to talk with Dr. Goyle, who started the clinic himself, but I also got to talk with some of his other physicians who joined his clinic. And honestly, I think it comes down to just personality type. I just really wanted to start something on my own. I think joining DPC is such a great option, and that it even is an option now, whereas, 5-10 years ago, it wasn't a thing. There's probably, there's this wave of people opening DPC clinics, but there's like a parallel wave of people that are joining these DPC clinics. It's two totally different, maybe not totally different experiences, but I think it allows different kinds of physicians to now join DPC, and it doesn't have to be those, the ones who start. I think you have to have a certain excitement and an entrepreneurial energy about you, even if you've never been in business before. But you have to be excited about it because it is a big undertaking. Whereas some other people are just worker bees and they just love being worker bees. They just want to do a good job. They want to be doctors without, the distractions of the fee-for-service model. And joining a DPC practice is such a good alternative now. And I really heavily weighed the two. And I think because I wanted to do something from scratch and have that kind of satisfaction or to be able to see that I could do something from the beginning and design it my own way, set up how I wanted the practice run. I guess I didn't even think about joining a DPC when I first started reading about it, just because a lot of the books, they kind of talk about it, but not really. It's all directed from starting it on your own. I really didn't entertain the idea of joining a practice till I visited because it was a viable option. And then I realized a lot of DPCs all over Texas in particular are hiring. And I was like, man, I didn't even think that I could do this. But then, I don't know, I guess I just reevaluated what my personal goals were. And I really did want to start it from the beginning.
I love that. And when you made that decision and you said, hey, I'm going to open up, how did you end up finding your space? Because it's next door to your father-in-law's office and it's inside of a med spa. It looks super well put together on your website. How did you end up finding your space?
So my father-in-law actually owns the building. So his clinic takes up a portion of it. And then he has a med spa and then there's a lab. So there's 3 main offices. It's a small building actually. And when I told my in-laws about my idea of starting a direct primary care practice, they're so generous and they're so kind to me. And they're always been so supportive of everything that I do. They said, you have space there. We don't use all the rooms in the med spa. Just consider it as an option. I weighed that decision for a while because it's actually not too close to where I live. It's about a 30-minute drive for me. And I, thought about, well, I really want to be closer to where I live. Should I lease a space? I kind of had talked to some different physicians in my area who are also looking to hire, sublease a spot. And it's funny, the DPC Summit of 2022, I was supposed to go in person. And then I think because my baby was so young, I ended up deciding to do it virtual. And I asked so many questions from the virtual side of things. I think in several talks, I would ask that question. Do you think I should lease from someone that's very close or have a little bit of a more affordable option using a family member space, but they're much further away? And people said, go for the more affordable option. So it was probably the best decision because it made the actual startup of my clinic a lot easier. The space, the space itself is already done. It was already an operating clinic. So I'm just creating my space from, I have 2 rooms. So I have one as my office space and then one as a patient exam room. And gathering the supplies, they're very small rooms. So I can't fit a lot. So I really kind of pared down my list to what is the most essential and decided I would just buy as I go. If it turns out I have a lot of people asking for ear lavages, then I'm going to buy that when that starts coming up. But I wasn't going to buy it up front.
You get hopped up on the excitement of, oh, I can get this too. And I definitely need this. And I definitely need this. But I totally agree. Like I, had some things myself that I forgot during doing home visits my first year. And I was like, oh, they need their ear cleaned. And I'm going to go to Amazon and find out how to buy an ear cleaning kit because I didn't have one. So yeah, I think that's great. And there, I want to ask, like on your 11-page document, did you have an addendum for your things that you ended up buying and in what order you bought them?
I did. I ended up creating a sub list, cut, paste, to do later. And I think I was so excited up front, adding so many things that I probably don't really need to have something to do, an exercise stress test just yet. That's probably something that can wait. Do I need a treadmill?
So I love that you said that because I legit got a CPET in my clinic because I'm building out a firefighter physical
Ooh.
program. So being able to measure VO2 max and having a CPET that I could have in my clinic was a big expense, but it's like, knowing that this was what it was going to be used for, that was how I justified, okay, this is the expenditure that I'm going to, be investing in so that I can do the care that I need to do. But I didn't buy it on day one. That I bought, earlier this year, and it came a couple of weeks ago. So that is really great. And it almost makes you want to think about, if you could Eisenhower matrix your list of all the things that you're brainstorming you need, just putting it into like, okay, who are my patients, if you have anybody, and like, who are they, like, if you know them from your previous practice, what are they usually, coming in for? Oh, I definitely know, like, that person has melanoma. I definitely need, biopsying stuff or whatever. But I think that you just mentioning that Eisenhower matrix makes me think, or that the way of how you set up your priorities as to how you're going to tick off your to-dos. I think that would be really effective for tools potentially.
Yeah. And can I just say, side note, isn't that so exciting that you're doing this firefighter thing? I mean, when else would you be able to do something so cool, right?
Absolutely. And I even when I opened DPC, it was not even on my radar. I didn't even know that our local firefighters did not have a firefighter physical. I just assumed everybody did. And so I have been, very sadly shocked about the screening that goes on nationally when it comes to firefighters, because like, check with your local firefighters if that's something that interests you, because a lot of firefighter districts do not have their physicals being followed to the standards of the NFPA. So just shout out to Dr. Erica Bliss and Dr. Krista Springston, who have really helped me along that journey to develop this for our firefighters. But being able to live in the community and know every time that I pass an Ebbets Pass Fire District truck, that like, I am working to make sure that they're safe on the job, it is such a rewarding thing. Like, it is incredibly rewarding. So yeah, that is so true.
It's a whole other form of patient care. I mean, obviously you're taking care of these firefighters, but you are by extension taking care of your community through these people. And I love that. I love that we can just dive into the community so much easier and without these restrictions and boundaries of who we can work with and what we can design. And there's no red tape. You can say, hey, there's a need. Let me address the need. Done.
So that is also true. When I was at the Capitol last weekend, talking to lawmakers about a healthcare bill and also funding to support residency positions, developing and funding residency positions in family medicine, specifically to serve rural and underserved areas, I was Googling my area and just making sure I had all my facts right. And one of those facts was that I am the only female physician who provides obstetrical care of any physician in my entire county. And I was like, I grew up in Sacramento, like, my family has, like, we are down the street from UC Davis Med Center. Like, how is this even possible in a whole county in California? So when you talk about what you can do if you are available and able to serve the needs of your community, it is flipping fantastic. That's why when I asked Dr. Filescu in his interview, like, will DPC work anywhere, or are there places it won't work? And he said, yes, it can work anywhere. And that is so true, especially if the value proposition is you are honoring yourself, you're honoring the patients, you're honoring the needs that both of you have, and you're not putting anyone, in bankruptcy doing it. It is fantastic. So when we talk about, this idea that DPC is so awesome, just jumping back into with you telling everybody, had you thought or had you found any ways that you can get the word through to not only residents, like people who are not yet in the system where, we find people making excuses for the way that their job is treating them. I know that there's those people, and I agree with you that there are the people the fee for service is their jam. They love it, no problem. But when it comes to opening the doors for people to be able to choose, you can take the red pill, you can take the blue pill. Like, how do you envision getting the word out more to people like yourself who were in residency and like could dream and formulate a plan to open up their own clinic?
Yeah, I think that goes with me talking everyone's ear off. So from my program, there has been, I think, one or two other former residents who joined DPC. So my program has heard of direct primary care. Maybe I don't know to what extent across all the faculty, for example, but I knew within the cohort of residents that I was with, people knew very little. So my second year, I gave a lecture in our didactics to my residency program about direct primary care. And then I did basically the same lecture again the next year for basically people who missed it, or maybe I added a few more points. And then I went back again after I graduated and talked to the now graduating class, just to kind of keep it in their minds, keep reinforcing it. So it's not this one-time thing that they heard by some random person. It's not a stranger. It's Cindy, that girl I literally just spent a month with in the hospital, and she's doing it. I know her personality. I know her. She's, she and I are the same, whatever. I think just constantly reminding people of the options, whether they choose it or not. You're right. It should be their choice. They should just know. And what I really want to do is I really want to target first year medical students before they've made that decision of going into any specialty, just to open their mind to primary care as an option, because everyone just paints such a bad picture of primary care. And it's so sad. I think some people go into medical school wanting to be a primary care doctor, and then they meet some specialist who just slams them down and says, no, you don't want to do that. They are just miserable. They're overworked. And there's some truth to those statements, but then they think that is life. And it's unfortunate that you go through all of medical school and then you choose maybe a specialty because of that advice. And what if your heart really was with primary care and having long-term lasting relationships with patients? And then you end up in this track, and now you're, quote, stuck, I guess, in a specialty, and then you're not happy. And that's how it tumbles. And so I think that is the area where we need to hit people. Pre-med might be a little bit too early. I actually was talking to a pre-med student the other day, and again, I could not stop talking. I probably overwhelmed him, and I kept trying to scale it back. And I said, okay, maybe this is not the age or population to really hit direct primary care. I'll just talk about primary care in general. But first year medical students, second year medical students that are still exploring, I think is a good target.
Well, I'm with you there in terms of like being in a place where it's like, bam, there goes the DPC waterfall out of my mouth. And like, I will say though, that the undergrads that I've talked with, when I ask them, like, what's your healthcare experience been in your primary? And they roll their eyes, they laugh, they have all of these like snide remarks about healthcare as a patient that they don't like. They're like, why would I go into primary care? But I'm in a pre-med club. Like, I'm definitely going to go to med school, but why would I do that? Like, that's a terrible job. And so I think that culturally, I mean, it's just like in California, we have like the first 5 programs, like the programs targeted to making sure that the first 5 years of a child's life are really enriched with different types of stimulation and activities and whatnot. It's like, you can't teach them too early is where I think that's a great thing that you're talking to even pre-meds, because you're formulating their outlook on life. You're giving them an option even before they've chosen a medical school. Because if somebody is like, well, shoot, I heard, Dr. Thompson and Dr. Almonds and Dr. Gonzalez's podcast, and I want to go to med school around Kansas so I can go to Via Christi or whatever it is, like, that can help them target their future path in medicine as well. And I'm very, very honored that I get to talk to people like you who are whipping out that DPC Kool-Aid spirit all the time. But it is really important that people know. I mean, it's just like, I wish that we had home ec. I wish that we had like, how much does it cost to have a baby? I wish that we had like, how much, does it, like, how do you even open a business? Like, in high school, I wish we had that, because I feel like I would have had a different outlook on financially being sound about retirement and about like how to budget and whatnot. So I think that that's a really good thing. And I definitely would encourage other people, if they have like connections to their pre-med societies around them or medical schools, residencies, to reach out and just say that. Cause I do the same thing. Like, I talk to residents at my former residency and they eat it up. I mean, just like you and I did when we were learning about this. Right. So with that said, with you and I, spewing the DPC Kool-Aid, one of the things I want to highlight, and you mentioned your sister earlier, but your family has been like along with you on this journey, including your in-laws. How have they all played a role in Archway Family Medicine?
It is crazy. Literally every single person in my family, from both my side and my husband's side, has done something for Archway. So, I mean, my husband, I could not even enter this mindset without him supporting me and just asking the questions. Because, it's great to have someone who doesn't know the model, to have kind of like a practice to teach, especially someone who, so he's a specialist, to explain it to that side of medicine. But anyway, so he's kind of the main supporting character in this. My sister Gabby, she has had the biggest role in how the clinic has been built. She's like my business manager is what I call her, even though she is not paid and she has her own business that she runs. But she really she set me up for success. She was someone that coaches people how to build their own apps and websites using a program where you don't need to know how to code. So that's her area. And she took a skill set that she just had and created a business out of it because she saw a need. And so though she is not medicine, just the steps that you need to take, and I kind of already mentioned this stuff, it's the same. Starting a small business, there's a lot of things that are going to be the same. And her wife works her business with her, and she is just marketing queen. So she has been the one that helped me kind of frame my website and copyright and figured out, what words need to be out there to get the message across, and how our patients who are not coming at this from a medicine side reading my material, whatever that may be. I have a younger sister who's like social media queen, just a data analyst. That's her actual job. And that's what she does. She works with social media. She's really been very helpful for my Instagram account. My brother actually came up with the name Archway. That's probably his biggest contribution. My sister-in-law is a lawyer, so she's looked over a lot of my legal paperwork. My brother-in-law, he has his own business himself, so he's also been kind of like a business consultant. And then my in-laws, as well as my dad, they're actually all in medicine. There's a lot of people in medicine in my family. It's been great to have that experience of someone who's worked they've all worked in different kind of practice types, so that's been very helpful. And then my mom, she translated my entire website into Spanish. So that is the family rundown.
I just love that. To me, when I learned that, it was like, how awesome is that literally you're being held up by everyone in your family, as well as all of the patients who join you. Like, there are so many people, and like all the people listening to your story now, like the community that is underneath us and with us in this whole endeavor of DPC. It's flipping amazing. Like, I never felt that when I left Creighton. Like, in residency, it was like, that's cool. There's like some people in your class that like are your besties. And then you go out to like no man's land and like, you don't know anybody, but yeah, like it's unreal what ties us together. And for your clinic, I think that is so awesome that you were able to pull from your family to support your clinic and what you're doing. When it comes to you mentioning how Gabby owns her own business and what she's doing in terms of business coaching, you recently got a word of a certain acceptance. Can you share with the audience what you got accepted to, and what are you looking to achieve with this acceptance?
I'm very excited. I just found out today. So I went to Rice for undergrad, and Rice has this business accelerator program for small businesses. It's fairly new. They had a similar program mostly for, I think, tech startups. And then last year they decided to open up this accelerator course for any small business. And I just saw an advertisement for it on Instagram, and I said, and it's only, so the thing is, you have to be either a Rice student, staff, faculty, or an alumni. So, and it said recent alumni, and I said, okay, I don't know what boundaries I'm pushing with recent, but I'm gonna just go for it. And honestly, everyone should just go for it. That is my motto for things. If you don't try, you never know what you can get. So the accelerator course itself is a 12-week course where you basically get lessons from different industry leaders for how to run a small business. And it culminates with this pitch presentation at the end to some 600 people, which is great. I'm excited to really, because so much of building the clinic has been, though I've had the help of all these people giving me advice, a lot of it, I'm the one that has to put it all together, and I'm the center of this clinic. And I want to make sure that my clinic is built on a solid foundation. And I think it is, but I'm so looking forward to this course because it will really at least tell me that I have built a solid business. And this is like, and what's nice is medicine really will have no real part in this. It's all about the business itself. And like you mentioned, I don't have a business degree. Most of us don't have business degrees. So it's nice to have a little bit of the structure and reinforcement and advice and mentorship And that'll take place throughout the summer. So, and honestly, now is the only time I could probably do it, when my clinic is just now starting up and, I'm not really cranking out patients, and yeah, looking forward to it.
That's awesome. And one of the things that I also learned when I was preparing for this interview was that you are very big on linguistics. So when it comes to your education in linguistics and how that translates to using linguistics in real life and creating a solid business platform and one that is solid to grow from, I want to highlight this linguistics quote that you said in a recent interview. And you said that language influences how we think. So when you were creating this solid foundation, because I'm going to say it's a solid foundation, even though you haven't taken this business course yet, just because of all of what you've shared already, when you were working with your family to develop your copy, and then that translated into not only in English, but a Spanish website, and then getting patients into your clinic, how did you find language to be most effective, whether it be in English or Spanish or another language, to really help your community understand what you were doing?
So language it's very important to me. I care a lot about words, and because I think the words matter. And the thing is, language is a cultural tool, and we have to use language to meet the cultural needs and to be understood from that culture. So medicine is its own culture. So if I talk about direct primary care from a physician's perspective, patients are not going to understand. You have to approach it from the patient's culture, the patient experience. And I think that's something where my sister-in-law, Kristen, where she helped me out, was everything needs to be about the patient. It's not about you. And it isn't, that's what I should say. It's really not about your clinic and your services, though that's what you're trying to provide. You're trying to have the patient understand how you can meet their needs. And so in terms of the website, at least, I tried to frame everything from, the intro page to how I explain the member benefits, even just the little details of my frequently asked questions page. I don't want to overwhelm the patient with the medicine side, because medicine is medicine, whether you're practicing it in fee-for-service or DPC. That's not why they came to your site, and that's not what they're looking for. They're looking to see, how are you different? How are you going to solve the problems that I've been facing, the lack of access, the lack of time, the being pushed around, the not knowing who to call and being sent to voicemails and never seeing my doctor for months at a time. Those are the pain points. And so we use language to meet their needs. And I think if I'm talking about direct primary care to a patient, I really have to think of their side and their experience, and use the words that are going to speak to them. It's a completely different conversation with a physician. And it's interesting, when we talked about how I was preparing for entering direct primary care during residency, during that, what is prepared versus ready. So I spent so much time talking to colleagues about direct primary care that I really nailed the direct primary care talk to a physician. And as I got closer to the end, I said, I haven't actually explained this to patients, to non-medicine people who want to understand the model. And I didn't feel ready for that part. I didn't feel ready to take the steps. I needed to practice the words. I didn't feel prepared. So I did have to shift in learning words and phrases. And I reached out to friends and family. What are your pain points? What are things that bother you about the current system? And I know the answers to some of this, but if you've never really been a patient yourself, you learn a lot about the little things, the subtleties of the current healthcare system that are just not working.
So as you talk about this journey of going from learning to being prepared in the physician space, not necessarily in that equal space when it came to patients. Mm. And I know you've had help along your journey when it comes to social media, but as you've taken your talk about DPC into the patient space, you've created some great social media. Like, there was one on cholesterol where it's a reel, you have like your logo, you have your branding, and then you're talking about like, why does it matter that I care about my health when I'm in my 20s and 30s? And you gave like the greatest mini medical school lecture on in a real form, oh, dang, like I've got to pay attention to that stuff now. That's a really good idea. How do you find social media to be most effective as you're weaving the tenets of DPC into the medicine and the value proposition that you're bringing at your clinic?
There's just so many sides to direct primary care that I want to talk about. And it's funny, my Instagram account has really been my way of exploring which of those sides speak to people the most, which sides do people not really resonate with. So I've dabbled in a few different types of posts, I guess you could say. What I kind of struggle with is, like I said, I have so much I want to say sometimes when I make those reels. So what I end up doing is I find either a pain point or I find a topic, a question that I get asked by a patient or even a family member. And I think, how can I explain this in the most simple, straightforward way, without complicating it, without using these ridiculous healthcare terms? And sometimes I even find myself just overcomplicating things. So I'll record a video and I say, that was just too complicated. I mean, I still need to make it more simple, more simple. Not to say that people can't understand the more complicated, but if you can make something simple, it'll stick a little bit better. And I think the content that I've made that address very simple, straightforward things like cholesterol in your 20s and 30s, or pediatric dosing of ibuprofen, or FSA versus HSA. So it's not necessarily all medicine. Sometimes it's just healthcare in general. People have so many questions. Those are the posts that seem to get the most feedback, whether they're actually commenting or people just talk to me. I mean, my friends, they'll come up to me and say, oh, I listened to your thing. I didn't know this, or I learned that, or oh, I actually went home that day and I looked up, did I have the right medicine bottle? And I think that's so cool, because this is just another awesome opportunity I have in direct primary care to meet the needs of patients, these tiny gaps in knowledge and tiny pockets that they're filling with internet information instead of real information from a physician that you can just fill. And it's so simple and it's fun. It's fun for me. It's creative. I have a fun time figuring out what's the best way to present the information. And I play around. Should I draw it out? Should I just talk to the camera? Should I use graphics? And that's both for me to figure out what works best for me, but also, what speaks to the audience best. So I'm still trying to find, I think I enjoy playing around with different content types, but I actually have a fun time playing around rather than sticking to one type of post.
That's my kind of girl. I swear. I will make crafts and never do them again, because it's just this idea of doing it once that gets the desire to lessen a little bit. So with that said, when you're, teaching yourself and navigating the world of social media, how much time do you dedicate per week, and do you schedule your social media posting time by day or by month? How do you attack your social media?
I really want to be better about it. I really want to have a content calendar, a social media calendar, which I haven't yet. I've semi done that. I think when I first started, I needed to just get the feel of it and just get a feeling for making content, or, I designed stuff on Canva and playing with Canva, the program, and figuring out what kind of information I wanted to put out. So the first few posts was really me just exploring that. And then once I had a sense of what I really want to speak to followers, viewers, whatever you would call them, then I started thinking about, okay, what's one topic I want to address this week, and how is that best presented? So right now I'm kind of just doing it week by week. So I'll say, okay, I wanted to talk about cholesterol. What aspect of cholesterol is really needed? And then, how is this best presented? And then I make that decision. And I decide that I only want to post. My other sister, Paulina, she helped me with this. She kind of framed it as, for a clinic, you don't really need to be posting every day, for one, and I don't have time. And I don't want that to become a need that I have in the future where I have to post every single day. I want it to be something sustainable. So my goal is to post maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And even if I just post once, I'm okay. But that was my goal, 2 or 3 times. And I tried to mix the types of posts. So I said, okay, one day I'll have maybe just a static post is what it's called, or a reel or a carousel type post where it's multiple slides. And I try not to, I got really excited at one point when I was doing a lot of healthcare talks in my account, and I felt like I needed to mix it up. And so I think I'm still in the experimental stages of the type of content, how often, And again, I don't want to overcomplicate it, but I really do enjoy this social media side. So I do take some time. I probably on Mondays think about what it is I want to post that week. I tell myself, oh, I'll wait and post this post on Thursday. And then I just post it that day because I can't help myself.
I love it. And you get to do that because you get to manage your own schedule. Like,
Yeah.
that's awesome. High five to you, man. That's great. I think it's so cool that you really get to be paid for being you. Like, your patients are paying you, you know, in a typical DPC practice where they're paying monthly, they're paying annually, whatever, but you're being paid to be you as a physician. There's no other Dr. Dafashy, and this is part of Dr. Dafashy. So I love that.
Yeah.
Now, another part of you that you've talked about already is that you are a mom of 2 kids that are under 5. And we were talking before this interview that I can relate to that world. That world is very, very unique to the experience of the parents who've lived in that world of being in the workforce, or just even having 2 kids who are under 5, even if they're not in the workforce. Like, that's being a parent of 2 kids under 5 is a lot. So that said, you've had a pretty crazy, you know, journey when it came to not only having your first baby at the end of 3rd year residency, but then you also had another little one come in 2022. So what has your journey been like with balancing becoming an attending physician as well as a business owner and starting to bring patients on while you have 2 little ones?
It's been an interesting journey. So I had my daughter my 4th year of medical school, and that was actually not so bad because the end of medical school, you're kind of winding down. You're not doing very much. It was very close to match day. So I had months, you know, where I could spend with her, but then dove into residency. Didn't really know anything else. I mean, I didn't know anything different. I started residency with a kid, so I don't know what it's like to do residency without a kid. So I could definitely see if you have a kid in residency, like in the middle of it, that's hard because that's a big adjustment. So I think because I started residency with a baby, I learned how to do that balancing act from the beginning, which was when I'm in the hospital or in clinic, I'm there, but when I'm home, I'm not a doctor. I'm a mom or a wife, and that's all I want to be. I really prioritize not doing anything unless it was absolutely necessary. You know, some critical lab came back. Yes, I'll address it, but I'm not going to be spending time finishing notes or, you know, checking my chart. I had Epic checking my chart for a result to come back that's really not critical. Yeah, I'm not going to waste my time doing that stuff. I have a life to live at home, and I get very few hours at home with that baby. And because my husband was also a resident, it was difficult to find a daycare in Galveston that fit those hours. There was 1 or 2 that had kind of like a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., but we needed more than that, which is so sad. I mean, it wouldn't happen often, but my husband would have days where he's leaving 4 or 5 in the morning. And then if I have to leave also 5 something in the morning, and then what if we both don't get back? So we ended up going with a nanny, which was the best thing we could have ever done. And she's such a blessing to our family. So that's how we handled the kid throughout residency. And then at the end of residency is when I had my second kid. And that was a bigger adjustment because he was born a month before my board exam. So I gave myself like a week to kind of adjust to the second baby in the house. And then I sat at my computer with my baby in my lap and would breastfeed him and would do questions and study. And that was just my routine. I was on maternity leave, so I was able to study. But yeah, maternity leave is not a vacation. It is work. It was, well, I don't know anything else. I've never studied for my board exams without a newborn in my lap. So this is just the way that it is. It was very nice graduating residency to finally have time to just spend with them. And it's so sad. I think when I was growing up, I always wanted to be a mom, always wanted to be a mom. And I would picture myself being there for my kids when they wake up in the morning, and then maybe I'd go to work and I'd be there for them to pick them up from school. And as I moved through the medical training, that picture seemed to get further and further away, not the idea of having kids, but being that kind of mom, being present for them and doing all the things that I wanted to do, being really engaged in their school life. And it was sad that it drifted away. And learning about direct primary care is when that picture came back into focus. And I said, I mean, this is bringing so much joy to me in so many different ways. And it's true. I am so happy now that I get to work from home if I need to. I don't have any patients that come into the office. I get to hang out with my baby. So my baby, actually, he decided he boycotted any bottle feeding. He literally fed from a bottle the last 2 months of my residency. We were going great. Then I came home and I wasn't, leaving all the time. And he said, you know what, I'm going to just be farm to table and it's breastfeeding directly from now on. And so starting up my clinic was a little bit tough because I was feeding him every 3 hours and he would do some long feeds. And so the first few months I would, work for 2 hours and then I would feed him. And then it's like to have to constantly step out and then step back into the mindset, step out, step back in. It has made me a little bit more efficient, but it's a little bit of a struggle to bounce between the two, to go from mom then to doctor, or mom business owner. And, when you're doing something as big as starting your own small business, you really have to, this book that I mentioned, The One Thing, it talks about, you really have to put all your energy into the one thing that you're doing in that moment. And eventually, I guess I just got used to it. The time breaks. I knew when he was going to be feeding. So when I did start seeing patients, I always scheduled patients between those hours. So because I literally would drive the 30 minutes to my clinic, see a patient or two, then drive back and feed him. And then some days drive all the way back to my clinic again so that I could keep seeing another patient. Some days I would have, I have a nanny with my second kid. So she would help me. Sometimes she would drive with me, hang out at the clinic. So just so I could breastfeed him on time and stick to our schedule. And we made it through. And now he's a year old.
And congratulations on that, because that is not an easy journey. Breastfeeding is not always an easy journey for everybody. And then on top of that, you throw every 3 hours, won't take the bottle. My goodness. I love that you are, I so appreciate that you're doing this interview. You're 2 hours ahead of me. And like, oh my goodness, I cannot even imagine. So that is awesome though, that you can look back on this time and like check that first year off. Like, we did it, we made it through, and you're still awake and not a zombie. So this is awesome, oh my goodness. When it comes to continuing to honor yourself and this, what you said, which I love, like from 8 to 5, I'm a doctor. And then after that, I'm a mom. What are the rules in your clinic for your patients in terms of after hours access? Like you said, if there's something like a critical lab, you'll call them. But how do you address the fear that some people have about, oh, you're on call 24/7. How can you do that while still honoring yourself and your goals to be able to live life the way you want to live it?
I definitely took the advice of many DPC doctors before me who really emphasize setting those boundaries early. So I make sure that first appointment where I meet, actually even before then, so I do an intro call with potential patients first, and I'll tell them that they have after hours access, but I always give that caveat for urgent or emergent needs. And I just throw it in there. I don't go into details in that call, but then when they do have their first appointment with me, I do the whole visit first. I focus on them and I do everything that we need to take care of. And then at the very end is kind of when I go over the rules of the clinic. And I've typed up a document that I hand out to them and I've kind of revised it a few times. But I just tell them from the get-go, I say, hey, here is a private number that you're going to have. I want you to use this when you need me. I mean, I don't want you to be afraid to text me or call me if something bad is happening and you're scared or you're worried or you really need to talk about it. But I want you to know after hours, meaning after my office hours are technically, quote, closed, I may not answer the phone or I may not answer the text right away. I do see everything else. I tell them I screen it. And if and I encourage them, I say, please leave a text or please leave a voicemail. Don't just call and not, because then I don't know. And I say, if it is a true urgent or emergent need, I will get back to you. And if it's not, you'll hear from me the next business day. I would never leave you hanging. And patients respect that. And I think when you set that boundary up front, they say, okay, got it. That's how you do your clinic and we're going to abide by it. And patients are so nice. I mean, they'll still say, I'm so sorry for for bothering you. And it's like 4:00 p.m. And I'm like, it's okay. This is a regular hour. I mean, it's not a big deal. And I have some patients who have greater needs than others. And it's just kind of been a reinforcement. So I continue to reinforce those boundaries, maybe not verbally, but maybe with nonverbal cues. So for example, I don't reply to their text right away if they are sending me lots of exclamation points for something that's really not that exciting. I'll get to their text later, and they've seen with time, they see, okay, this is her normal. When it's very urgent, she calls me right away. When she is concerned, she lets me know. But if she's not concerned, she gets back to me. She always gets back to me, but it might not be 5 seconds later. And I think there might be a little bit of training with some patients and those are the patients that are high needs, and that's okay. There's always going to be patients like that. But even my high needs patients are not abusing the after hours access.
That's great. And I love that, as you mentioned, there's much more in the world of DPCs that have opened, so that, people like yourself who are open recently, people who are planning on opening, there's lessons learned from other people's experiences, and taking those lessons is so invaluable. And that's why, it is such an honor to talk with you and all of the guests who have come onto the podcast, because you guys are sharing your lessons that you've learned. And there is someone out there, multiple people out there, who are going to benefit from your words. When you were going into your checklist and the 11-page checklist, how did you design your clinic so that the tech you needed was going to support the way you wanted to practice?
I always knew I wanted the onboarding process to be as straightforward as possible. I wanted to have the least amount of technical requirements from the patients. So all the tech that I use is all electronic. They don't actually have to do anything by paper. I wanted just the most simple, straightforward way. The softwares that I use, you can really set it up how you want. You could send them, an email so that they register and then they fill out forms and all that stuff. But I knew that that's not how I wanted to start. I wanted them all to start with an intro call, because patients get overwhelmed when you send them a lot of instructions and paperwork. And that's what all the fee-for-service clinics do. I mean, they make an appointment and they're given 10 pages to fill out on the clipboard, and they're just like, all this paperwork. And so while I had the option to do those things, I wanted to make sure I also had the option to not do those things. So I had patients just do their intro call first. And then on that call is when I tell them, okay, I'm going to send you this link, and this is how I open a chart for you. After you get that link, you'll get this email from me. And then that's it. And so I try to make the email very simplified on every step of their enrollment process, which is really 2 steps. Again, at the bottom of those emails or messages, they'll say, you're on step this. And it says, so I have like step 1, intro call, step 2, register, step 3, enroll. And then, so I highlight which step they're on. So that it makes it easier for them. And I really just want to do the least amount of paperwork electronically as possible, because a lot of the stuff isn't necessary. And a lot of the stuff I'm asking again anyway. So for example, I initially thought I was going to have like an intake questionnaire. I do have a very brief one with their medical history and medications, but I started even creating a form of detailed questions. And I thought, these are all things I ask anyway. And these are things that I want to hear from them directly and explain. So I'm just not going to do it. And I know it would save time. And I think I was still in the mentality of the fee-for-service clinic is, how much work can I get done before I actually have to enter that room, because I have no time when I'm in that patient room. So whatever information can be preloaded, let's do it. And that's taking away from your conversation, and it's taking away from building the trust and building the relationship. So I said, I'm not going to do it. I mean, I don't know. Things might change as my clinic gets busier and whatever processes, workflows change. And I'm ready to change. I'm adaptable, and I know I have to be flexible, but in this current moment, I don't need to. So I'm going to make things simple, and it's going to be simple for me and simple for the patients.
I love that. And again, it's your creativity, your adaptability, your person coming to showing up and really designing your clinic the way that it needs to be designed for you and your community. So it's absolutely the embodiment of the DPC Kool-Aid and what happens when someone drinks it. So love it. Now, spinning that on a 180, recently I had read some posts about somebody deciding that DPC, just as a membership model, was not going to work for them. And they started taking insurance, and comments were made about, there's a lot of shame and a lot of embarrassment, within the community. As supportive as we are, people feel that they're being looked down upon if they go into DPC and it doesn't work, especially if they've opened their own clinic or they've joined a DPC clinic and that wasn't a good fit for them and they leave that DPC. When it comes to the fact that in 5 years, over half of the businesses that have opened will close in that time period, I should say small businesses, your spirit of resiliency that's come through in this whole interview, pulling from that, how do you address the, question of, will I be viable in 3 years and 5 years? And why do you feel that way?
Yeah, so I can see why physicians might feel that way. I think physicians in general are probably more type A people. In medicine, you have to approach everything with the utmost caution because mistakes in medicine can be life-threatening. So we don't take risks lightly. And to enter DPC feels like a risk, and you feel vulnerable, and you're, putting yourself out there doing something that's different. And so when we quote fail, or if we feel like we fail, we feel like it's a failure of our own inherent abilities, or it's our own, and we don't think that perhaps the failure could have been the environment, something else. Maybe I'm not to say that there's not a role that you have, and if a clinic doesn't succeed, if it doesn't meet your needs, or if the clinic doesn't turn out how you expected. But yes, failures do sometimes happen, and failures need to happen. I think sometimes you find opportunities out of these failures. That you think of some of the greatest businesses and how many times they've remodeled. I mean, you think about Apple, how many times did they have to restructure their business model? They had to fail in order to succeed. You have to be vulnerable in order to succeed. When I was a resident, I typed up on a piece of paper, vulnerability begets strength. And I posted it on our team wall because I felt like it was a message that everyone needed to see, that it is okay to be vulnerable around people, to have weaknesses, to show that you're weak, to ask for help, because it is in those moments where you find your strength and you learn your resilience. And honestly, if you're a DPC doctor who has chosen to close your clinic, or maybe it didn't work out the way you did, you are probably the best person to be in that position because you left the traditional system and you took that risk. You're someone who knows how to face adversity, and you're someone who knows how to think outside of the box and find out ways to do something better for yourself, for your family, for your career. And though a DPC clinic might have not worked, that doesn't mean you have to go back into the system. And I wonder if maybe that shame or guilt comes from people feeling like, man, I had all this energy to leave this system, and they think, do I have to go back? Everything I talked about, was I lying to myself, to my patients? And it's not true. I mean, it's so cool to see how physicians who are stepping out of the fee-for-service are also exploring other avenues of, for example, like sources of income. And it's because they're realizing you have been so focused on this one-track career that medicine is medical school and residency and then doctor in the system, and you keep going until you retire. And now you're learning, hey, I did this whole thing where I started a business and that wasn't in my original plan. Maybe there's some other offshoot of medicine that I realized I was really into, that maybe this would bring me more joy and I will be more successful at it because I have a bigger passion for it. So I think actually DPC doctors are the prime example of strength and resiliency. And those doctors who quote fail are probably going to be the ones who come out of it the strongest.
I really, truly appreciate you sharing those words. And, something that you had shared in the interview recently that you'd done on the Hidden Gems podcast with Jen was that your journey into medicine was not undergrad medical school, residency, attending, you and I are alike in that journey too, in that the first round of applications, I saw my best friend in undergrad, George Washington got an interview, blah, 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 got an interview. We had this whiteboard going, and here's Marielle's like, there's the cricket side of the whiteboard. And then there's, my best friend from undergrad's side of the whiteboard. And so I think that when you talk about that early vulnerability and early lessons in quote unquote failure or not seeing what we thought we expected we would see can lead to more resiliency, at the end, because we've had maybe more time to learn those lessons. But I mentioned that one, because, if that is your experience as a listener, I definitely would say that's a real feeling. It's very normal to have, a fear about like, what if I do this? What if I don't do this? And bring those concerns to, the mentorship groups at the DPC Summit, or if you go to a mastermind, or if you, like the Savannah, Georgia doctors, of which there are a ton, the DPC doctors in Savannah, they like meet up multiple times on Instagram. They're like Instagram famous. And I'm like, that's the community that is literally behind all of us. And so, when it comes to this feeling isolated and not wanting to air out concerns or fears, definitely find your people, because not everyone's going to be supportive, but there sure as heck are people that have tripped over things, scraped their knees and gotten up, and kept going. So thank you again for sharing that. And with that said, as you go into your future, what are the next goals that you're attacking at Archway Family Medicine?
So I mentioned the business program that I'm going to be doing, and I think I really want to set up a solid understanding of running a small business, because like you mentioned, yes, small businesses fail, and it's a reality that I don't want to ignore, and I don't want to be naive about it. And I really want to, though I don't have a business degree, I take it very seriously that I am running a business, and this is something that I have to learn. It is new. It's not medicine. It's not something I've trained for. So it's really important for me that I really build that foundation. And I've started by just reading books. I read. I think I'm such a book learner more than anything. And that's been great. But I think really hearing from people not in medicine, but in the small business world, or these kind of leaders, would be helpful. I love exploring. You mentioned the firefighters that you're helping. I love doing things like this, exploring the little pockets of need in the community. So I am constantly reaching out to different people, like constantly. I have little octopus tentacles all over the place, trying to see what's out there, what's needed, like where can I help? And so I'm kind of dabbling in a lot of different things. I'm giving a talk in the future, kind of a series with the senior program at our local community center, which is on my side of town, not where my clinic is, purely to just talk to seniors and kind of find out what their needs are or what they would like to hear from their physician. I'm trying to set up some talks with the library. I've kind of engaged with different community programs in the town or the side of Houston where my clinic is to kind of meet those needs. So I'm still so much in that beginner stage that I am putting all my feelers out, because I just want to open all the doors right now, and then which door is the brightest, which one I like the most, and where I want to focus my attention. Because I know I'm not going to be able to focus my attention in all these places, and I don't want to spread myself thin. And again, like we talked about, the power of no is very important, and I can't say yes to everything. But how am I going to know what to say no to if I don't check, if I don't look what's out there?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Dafashy, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It is my honor. I've learned so much from your podcast in starting my own. You provide such a valuable resource to residents, physicians, med students, everyone. This is an incredible honor to be here.
Next week, look forward to hearing from Dr. Lauren Scadam of Britt House in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. If you've enjoyed the podcast and you haven't yet done so, subscribe today and share the episode with a physician you may know who needs to hear about DPC. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify now, as well, as it helps others to find all these DPC stories. Lastly, be sure to follow us on social media. If you're wanting to continue learning more about DPC in the meantime, check out dpcnews.com. Until next week, this is Marielle Concepcion.